Recently, I got to go hands-on with Bleak Faith Forsaken, which is a Souls-Like ARPG developed by just 2 people. And in this video, I want to tell you what my hands-on impressions of that demo. A demo that's coming to the public not too soon, so you guys should be able to get your hands on this in the near future. The first thing I want to note about this demo is that it's not a complete picture of the game. Some things have been removed, such as your inventory screens, the story-related aspects, anything related to the narrative of the game, as well as the survival elements. Apparently, there are survival elements in the game. It's not something you'll see during the demo. So you're not getting a 100% idea of how the game will play, but rather just a kind of sneak peek into how the combat will play and the level design of the game. So first, I want to talk about the things that I liked about this demo and what I liked about Bleak Faith Forsaken so far. I think the first thing is that there are 3 classes. They arbitrarily put these together, as my understanding, for this demo that you can pick from, and they play very differently. They have very different play styles, and it's very obvious, particularly when you get to the bosses of the game, how these classes fare against those bosses and the strategies they employ to defeat them. They feel very different, so they did a really good job here. Another thing is there is a wide variety of abilities to use that makes gameplay more interesting. Each class sort of has like 10 abilities or so that they can use, and I think maybe about 5 or 6 of those are active. And you can sort of sub these out on the fly while you're moving around the landscape. And I just really like the way they handle this. It's very simple, it's very straightforward, very easy to use, and it adds an element of combat that I think, something like Souls is missing. Another thing I really appreciated is that the controls, at least for gamepad, I haven't tried doing this for keyboard and mouse, were completely customizable, so I could, bind whatever I wanted to whatever key, and this really helped me find the setup that worked best for me, because what their default layout wasn't quite how I would like it, and I was able to just tweak it around and get it exactly how I wanted, which was great. Another thing that I enjoyed is that exploration is a bit more involved than the Souls games. That is to say, you climb and swim. I don't know if there's going to be other aspects, further on in this game, since this is just a demo. But I did enjoy that it's a little bit more involved than the Souls games, and that it's not just run around and find stuff and maybe make an occasional jump. Here, you're actually climbing, you're swimming, there's underwater segments. And it feels a bit more, Assassin's Creed-y. I don't know if that's the right word. But it's not just two-dimensional. It's not just two-dimensional in 3D where you're running around like on flat surfaces or going up ramps. Like, you're actually getting involved with the environment, and I like that. Another thing I really liked was the Silicon Visage boss fight. This is one of the boss fights in the demo. I like the look of it. I like the ambiance. I like the style. It was a very intense boss fight. It took me about half a dozen tries to get it down, since I was still kind of learning the controls and tweaking them around and learning my class, etc. But it felt very rewarding. It was nail-biting, like I was down to last hit. So they did a really good job here, and I think if this is sort of the quality of bosses we can expect throughout the game, I think we're in fairly good hands. The fact that 2 people made this boss is pretty impressive in my opinion. Okay, moving on to the things I dislike about the game. I think the first thing is the set. I don't know if you could call it the setting of the game. The world that you're playing in feels very bland and unfinished. A lot of spaces are just wide open, fading to gray, almost like, 2 guys are developing this game and they don't have time to develop what's in the distance or edit what's in the distance, because they're focusing on the more important things like combat and mechanics. And so it just kind of feels like you're playing inside something that's not completely done, and I don't know how that's going to translate to the whole game, because this is just one segment. Another thing I really disliked was the audio. I felt like it was very poor quality, like it just didn't sound good, both the sound effects and music. Very, very poor quality here, and it's something I hope to see completely replaced with better sound effects in the future. Again, I understand this is a 2-person project, so that's something that may or may not happen, because again, when you're 2 people, you have to prioritize the things you're doing, but this is something that really could improve, I think. Another thing I'd like to see polished up a bit is combat. Combat is really good during boss fights, in my opinion. This is where you get to see all the tools of your character, and it really shines, but outside of that, when you're just fighting the regular enemies, making your way through the level as you explore, it's very rudimentary. Basically, every enemy in the game can be stun locked with R1 no matter what class you are. So all you really do is run up to them and just mash R1 as much as you can until they die. That's basically the case for most of the demo. And a lot of times enemies don't even react while you're pummeling their friend or companion or whatever next to them to death. They don't even look at you. So there's a lot of overhaul that needs to be done outside of the boss fights. And probably the last thing I really took issue with the demo is the amount of bugs. Obviously, there's a disclaimer at the beginning that there's going to be bugs, so that's not surprising, and this is not a finished product. But I felt like there were just way too many bugs for even a demo. So where does this leave us with Bleak Faith? I think it's quite obvious if you play Bleak Faith Forsaken for any amount of time that the game is made with passion. It's actually pretty impressive what 2 people have done so far. And you can clearly see that they have a grasp on the things that make Souls games good, and they are obviously prioritizing their time to the things that make the most sense. Obviously, things like what's happening in the background and sound effects are second to the actual mechanics of the game, which is where I think they've spent the bulk of their time, that and level design. So I feel like they have a good handle on that, and it really shows once you've played a bit. However, demos, in my experience, are, small slices of a game that give you sort of insight on how the game will play. Obviously, they're not 100% accurate representations because it's basically a piece of the game taken out of context, and that is the case here, even with systems being removed, etc. But the thing about demos is usually they are polished up quite a bit in order to give somebody, they're used as a marketing tool, right? To promote the game the best way possible. Here is what our game, you can expect it to play like when it's totally done. Well, the problem is there are so many bugs in this, and there are so many unpolished parts of this, that if this is what it plays like when it's done, it's going to be a disaster. They still have 5 months left in order to, clean up the game, but with 2 people and only so much time in a day that they can do that, I don't know how they're going to get everything they need done with this game in that time period. I would actually like to see this game delayed until next year. I feel like it has the potential to be a cult classic to the Souls-like community, but it has a ways to go. I just cannot see them getting it ready in those 4 or 5 months left in the year. And I would much rather this game come out next year and be polished and pretty and really live up to the expectations of people who've been following this game for a while, instead of getting something that's, half-baked, which is, becoming a trend in the gaming industry, and people will probably really, shy away from. The playable demo that I played here should be available to the public here fairly soon. I don't know if there's an exact date yet, but I do know the developers have been making patches to the game, even as I've been playing over the last few days. So I'm hoping the version you guys get is even less buggy than what I have, because I know they're working their tail off to get that out. But I would be curious to see what you guys think. What do you guys think of the gameplay? How does it look to you? What are you curious to see? I mean, how are the survival elements going to work? How is the story going to work? What do you guys think of the level design? I would love to hear your thoughts.